Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Scuf Envision Pro wireless PC controller, which I've had the Scuf controller on my list of things that I've wanted to purchase and review for some time now. I've even asked for help from my viewers to see which faceplate options would look best, but when it would finally come down to purchasing it, I just could never bring myself to actually do it. The look of the PlayStation 5 controller is one that I love, but they don't work great on PC, just with the wireless connection and trying to use it via Bluetooth. And I didn't want to just get the Xbox controller, as to me it's kind of an Xbox controller with a facelift. It costs too much with these controllers, especially when you are going the custom route. But that all changed with the announcement of the Envision Pro wireless controller because it's PC specific, so this really grabbed my attention immediately, and I'm glad that I waited. And for me personally, this is one of the best wireless controllers that I've used to date, and I'll even take this slightly over my Elite 2 controller for one major reason: the button switches. Seriously, this is a PC gamer's dream here to have Omron mechanical buttons that feel just like a mouse here. But before I go much further, let's cover the specs with this controller. The Envision Pro wireless controller uses the Corsair Slipstream technology to provide ultra-fast wireless connectivity. This has the Omron mechanical buttons, as I mentioned a minute ago, for the A, B, X, Y buttons, as well as the D-pad. The triggers have traditional full pull to them, or you can switch them over to the instant mouse click triggers with the slider that is inside of the trigger itself. The P2 and P3 paddles also seem to have the same mechanical feel to them, but it's not mentioned that they are also the Omrons. The rest of the triggers here feel like a normal Xbox controller, which includes the left and right shoulder buttons, P1 and P4 paddles, and then the side action buttons, which provide pointer finger activation from any of the A, B, X, Y buttons. There are 5 G keys towards the bottom middle of the controller that all illuminate with the LED light bar right there as well, and these are all programmable to any function that you need via the iCUE software, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Next, let's do a quick overview of all the buttons. Starting on the front, you have the A, B, X, Y on the right hand side. On the left hand side, you're going to have the D-pad. Then you have the thumbsticks. The power button is in between the thumbsticks, and then underneath that is the program switch button. Under all of that, you have the G buttons I just talked about with the light bar. Up towards the top, just like the Xbox controller, you have the menu button on the right hand side, and on the left hand side, you have the map key or toggle view button. On the outside, you'll find the side action buttons, and then towards the top, you have the left and right shoulder buttons with the triggers right behind those, which moves us to the back of the controller. In the middle towards the top, you have the USB Type-C input, so you can recharge the controller, which I can't find any info on the battery size with the controller, but 17 hours is what I've consistently found online for what Scuf says the controller can do with the lights on, but I've seen lots of other users reporting longer play times with those lights on, and then you could even extend this further out if you're going to turn this on to the eco mode, which shuts these lights off. In the middle of the controller, you have the wired and wireless connection options here, so when you don't have the wireless dongle, you can still plug this in and use it as long as this is switched over to the plug connection icon. Next, you have the 4 paddles, which are all programmable in the iCUE software. And on the very bottom, you will have the auxiliary or headphone jack. Next to that too is an icon that will illuminate if you have this plugged in and it is charging. And to finish it out, you have the non-slip grip, which the wired version of this controller does not have. Moving back to the front, the faceplate is held on by magnets and is easy to remove, so you can buy other faceplates down the road if you'd like to change out the aesthetics of the controller. You can swap out the D-pad, the thumbsticks, the ring around the thumbsticks, and even replace the battery if needed. Now, the downside right now is these aren't available on the Scuf website, and I don't know how long until they are available. These options are just on the site for their other controllers at the moment, but I would assume in the next handful of months, we should start to see these things become more available. I'm also assuming any part that needs to be replaced that are covered by warranty, Scuf might actually just send that part to you so you can replace it, because everything here is modular. It just is easier to replace because of this. So seeing that available down the road would be awesome, because if you're outside of warranty and you just need to get the part, you don't have to email Scuf and explain the situation and go through that whole process. You can just order the thing that you need and simplify that whole experience. Last thing I wanted to point out here is that on the front, there is a reset pinhole, and it's very close to the AB buttons. So if you ever need to factory reset this, that's where you would do it. The controller is compatible with Windows 10 and 11, but not Mac. I don't know about Linux, but do keep that in mind. The controller weighs 286 grams with a 32-foot wireless range, and this comes with a 12-month warranty, so a 1-year warranty. Inside of the box, you get the Envision Pro, the wireless dongle, braided 6-foot USB-A to USB-C cable, a USB-A to USB-C adapter, 2 additional thumbsticks, 2 side action blanking plates, and 2 inner paddle blanking plates, and then the inner paddle removal tool. The last 2 specs here that I wanted to cover, I actually don't have an answer for. I don't know what the input lag is, and I don't know what the polling rate is, and you don't get to adjust the polling rate through the software. I've emailed Scuf to find out this information. I will update the description when I hear back, but I usually don't hear back in a timely manner from any of these companies. So disappointed that we don't have this information on the website, but also disappointed that you don't get to adjust these things in the software. I have read online that this basically has a 1 millisecond input lag, so solid performance there. I haven't noticed any massive issues personally when playing this, and I'll talk about this more in a little bit. But having this information confirmed by the company to me is important, because if I'm on a PC, this is stuff that just PC players are expecting to know, and they want a certain level of performance when it comes to their mouse and their keyboard. A controller, they're going to hold it to the same standard. Now, personally, I don't do crazy in-depth testing with these reviews. That's just not my knowledge base here. It's more just from a casual gamer's standpoint. So outside of just running basic website input lag testing, that's the only thing I've done. I've not tested the polling rate here to see, hey, what is this going to confirm that it is? And then in a game, just pushing the button, seeing, hey, how long does it take to register that action? Because if there's a crazy delay, you know that the input lag is really high. And from that, you can assume, hey, this probably has a bad polling rate, which I'm going to talk about this again here in a little bit. But for right now, I want to shift over and cover the iCUE software. So this is the iCUE software. There is a lot to cover here. I'm going to try to do this as quick as I can. We have the receiver and then the controller. If you hover over that, you bring up just quick options right here. So let's look at the receiver. We have device settings. Once you click on that, it brings you to the main portion. Check for updates, and then force update, browse for firmware. And then connections. You can see that this is the Scuf Envision Pro. This is paired to the receiver. Now if I go back to home, we have the controller right here, but before I get to that, the murals over here, this one's interesting. This is for the lights. You can make your own murals as well. And then we have the different options here. You click on one, click next, and you run through renaming it and what you're going to do. When you click on whatever that's going to be, it applies it to the light bar at the bottom. So with this, it's essentially going to give you a small zone on the image or whatever the audio effect is, and then it will display that to the actual RGB light bar on this. Then we have our sensors here. Not really worried about these outside of the fact that we have the option to put the battery monitoring right here, which I do have on. Clicking on the Scuf Pro here though, this is just, again, the quick options. If I just click on one, it brings me to the main portion here. So we'll look at this here in a second. We're going to start at the top. So we have mappings. You can do the presets if you want, or you could go custom and just change all of these to your liking. So this is where we're going to remap those G keys, or we're going to remap the paddles, or if you're looking at the side action buttons, you can do that as well. Again, we have presets if you wanted to just use those. Hardware mapping, it's the same thing, right? Outside of the difference with the custom is what do we want to change this to, right? This is going to leave it as, hey, by default, we have mute mic, increase or decrease volume, mute the overall volume, or click this into the eco mode, which turns the RGB lights off. This is the lighting effect here, and this is where we have the murals. So if we go to murals, this is where it's going to display whatever that image or video is. And then I just drag this to the section, or I can blow it up. And so whatever is crossing the light bar right there, that's the colors that it's going to display. I can't match this to the camera, but I will showcase this so you can see that it's just going to change that lighting for you there. Go all the way back to the controller though, or you can just do simple lighting if you wanted to do that. The murals has to be turned off, but with this, the presets, watercolor, color pulse, color shift, rainbow, custom, we have gradient, solid, static, and then you have even more options down here. Do you want it to showcase the temperature, typing light, visor, all these different things, the speed, you're going to do it for all of the zones. So stuff that you can do here, again, create your own, rename it if you want to, and then the library if you have these set up. Triggers after that. The thing I do like with this is if I pull this down in real time, it shows me. So we don't have the polling rate or the input lag information. But looking at this and just seeing it in real time, I at least see that there's not this massive delay between when I'm pulling the trigger right now. You also get to change the curve response, default, linear, exponential, aggressive, or custom with this, okay? And then we're looking at trigger position, trigger value right there. And if there was a dead zone, you would see that would just be a black area right now, okay? So we have that. You can come up with your own, again, any type of preset right here we have, but you can come up with your own and then save that to this if you wanted. Thumbsticks, same thing. If I'm looking at the thumbsticks and I'm moving this around, you get to see in real time, like, oh, this is actually responding to me moving this without some massive input lag. So there's just this way to test it as well outside of downloading other software. Then we have the curve response, dynamic, linear, exponential, aggressive, custom. Change that or go into your presets here, and any of these presets, you can copy them, you can paste them in there and then make adjustments if you want to. I do like this feature. It just doesn't say, hey, here's the option to change the polling rate, or hey, this is what the input lag is right now. There's no way to monitor that via the software. I hope down the road we do get that. Now on the website, they have the user manual, and there are a ton of cool videos and just a huge breakdown of everything this controller does. I will make sure that a link for that is in the description. But with this, at the bottom, you can adjust the dead zone. But in the manual here, it's saying if you adjust it below 2%, it may cause unintended trigger movement in game or within menus. So by default, it will be at 2%, something to keep in mind. But the fact that you get to make the adjustment to the dead zone, I like that. And this level of customization that you're getting with the triggers and the thumbsticks and the vibration, I think Scuf did a good job here because PC players are going to expect that. If I'm dealing with just a regular Xbox or PlayStation controller and I'm bringing that over to PC, I know that it is intended for a console. But if I'm looking at a controller that is specifically designed for PC, I'm going to want a higher level of customization, because that's why most people go the PC route. They want more customization, both in terms of the components, the software, and the peripherals. After that, you have vibration. You get to adjust this. You can sync them, right? Or if we want to scale this down, let's bring this all the way down. If I want to unsync it, and we'll pull one, hey, I want one max and the other one I don't want, you have that option as well. And then just looking at our presets, what do we want that preset to be? Copy this if we want to, or go through and, hey, what's my own personal preset going to be? And I can rename that. And then we have our device settings. So running the latest firmware here, but we can check for updates, status, and battery. So we are doing the wireless connection here, and then I have high battery. Brightness for the color is at 60%. Scaling this is where you can take that roughly 17 hours that they're talking about, and you can get more out of that. We can start to push into the 20s with this potentially, or just turn it off and get more battery life. with this controller, but that's up to you, right? You get to scale this to whatever needs. If I'm using this and it's something where, hey, I want this to display the battery and I'm not going to turn this off, maybe I turn it down so it just doesn't drain it as quick. Auto shut off here, we can set this after 10 minutes. This is going to automatically turn off. We can set this to whatever we want, or we can have it so it will never auto shut off. Eco mode, if I click this on, automatically turns the lighting off on the bottom light bar and for those G keys. Show battery gauge in notification area, I have this turned on, or you can turn this off. And then this is paired already, so I don't have to worry about that. The onboard memory, I do like this feature. So if we're going to take this to a different PC and I'm going to plug this in and I don't want to have to worry about downloading the software and doing all those things, you can actually save this to the onboard memory, and you would use those G keys, or actually it's not even the G key, it's the profile button underneath the main power button to cycle through these. So whatever you've saved as your preset to this for a racing game or a shooter or an adventure game, whatever it may be, you get to cycle through those presets. But the other cool thing is, hey, it will save it to this. So if I'm going to just take this over, use it with a different PC, plug it in, it's going to keep that. So I don't necessarily need the software for those presets to still register and be saved on the controller. So that is the software. There's a lot of stuff you can dive into with this. It's pretty complex, which can be a good or bad thing, but I think PC players are going to expect a certain level of customization with this. I hope we get more things down the road. Again, latency, things like this, if we're looking at the polling rate or the input lag or input latency, that we can control and adjust here. But very good start, and it's only going to get better over time as they take feedback from the community and then apply it to the software. So now that we've covered the software, let's go ahead and shift over now, and I want to talk about the things that I like about this controller and my overall user experience. So now that I've covered the specs and software, let's get into my overall user experience. And this is where this review is going to get a little tricky, as I know the PC community is going to be divided over this. Most hardcore or enthusiast PC gamers don't like playing with controllers as much as a mouse and keyboard, because overall those are going to be more accurate and faster in their response time. So I can already hear those players just saying "F that" when it comes to using this, as it means a sacrifice in the edge they have in games like first-person shooters over anyone else that is using a controller. For more casual gamers and those rare enthusiasts like myself that play certain games with a controller and certain games with mouse and keyboard solely based on preference or potentially performance, I think this is going to be a great controller for you. So knowing most hardcore gamers and enthusiasts are going to most likely skip using a controller at all, outside of the rare person out there that fits that bill and still uses a controller, I'm just going to be judging this based on the people I think are really going to be using this controller. So now that we've established the lens through which I'll be viewing this and judging this off of, let's go ahead and continue here with performance, which for me overall has been really great. I haven't had any noticeable input lag, no drop signal, no unregistered buttons or crashes with the software. The main games I play on the controller are RPGs, adventure games, and certain first-person shooters. Growing up playing consoles only and then transitioning over to PCs about 8 or 9 years ago, I forced myself to learn mouse and keyboard on certain games like Halo and Doom, while others I've opted to stay with the controller. I don't play many competitive games, and that to me makes it easier to stay on a controller, but when it is a competitive game, like if I'm playing Halo Infinite Multiplayer, I always want to use a mouse and keyboard for the edge that I get with that over a controller. But as I mentioned before, the Omron switch style buttons here are one of the main reasons I love using this controller, as it brings that clicky mouse feeling to the controller and it makes it feel more responsive. Now, how much it actually does that is something I don't know, but in terms of the feel over a regular controller, it just feels better and more responsive. And that might just be a placebo effect in regards to the performance here, but even if it is, I'll still take these just based off of the feel and sound. Which, let's do a quick sound test between the Envision Pro, the Elite 2 controller for Xbox, and the PlayStation 5 controller. And I didn't throw this in at the spec section of the video, but I want to go ahead and cover it now. Let's just showcase all of the buttons and the sounds that they make. For the rest of the triggers and buttons, I really like the trigger actuation adjustment you can make, but I do wish this was like the Elite 2 controller with 3 settings versus just the 2, and the slider that this has being inside of the trigger helps save space, but it is harder to use. The Elite 2 has this on the back, and it just feels like a better placement. The programmable G buttons at the bottom are awesome and not something I've used on any other controller in the past. It's just something I haven't seen with any other controller. And it's been fun to try and figure out what I can program these for. And even the defaults with the volume control make it easier to adjust those things on the fly instead of using the scroll wheel on my keyboard. It's just all right there in my hand. The paddles and side action buttons here seem to be set to the ABXY buttons in most games just by default. And specifically the side action buttons here, it's another area that's interesting to try and figure out what you can program these to for specific games to make that experience better. Whether that's quicker weapon swaps in a first-person shooter or special skill activation in an RPG, the possibilities here are fun to explore. Now, in terms of design, this is an interesting mashup of the Xbox and PlayStation controller. From the website, I initially thought it was trying to mimic the PlayStation controller more, but seeing this in person, its shape is more like an Xbox controller, but smoothed out more like a PlayStation controller, with the button layout copying the PlayStation 5 controller, which has the thumbsticks at the bottom, while the Xbox has the D-pad and left thumbstick swapped out. Personally, I really like the design here, and it's really comfortable to use for those longer play sessions. And I just think it's a cool mashup of these two controllers, and it all comes together very nicely. Now, the matte finish style on the front faceplate does mean it collects a lot of smudges though, as you've most likely seen in the B-roll footage here. I do like the fact that the faceplate is removable too, and the parts can be easily swapped out. But the downside right now is none of these are available on their website, and there's no word on when they will be. I'd also like to see more parts listed on the website. I talked about this earlier, just so you can repair this controller yourself more easily than having to go through, hey, I have to contact the company, then I have to wait on them to respond, and you go through that process and it just takes a long time. You can just order this whenever you need it. The blanking plates here are a nice touch, so if you don't want to play with the side action buttons or the two middle back paddles, you can actually just cover those up, so you're not going to accidentally hit them and it won't register when you put your hand over it. I like that touch. It is something nice to see. I do think a missed opportunity here though is going to be the top middle, which looks like the touchpad from the PlayStation 5 controller, but it's just a design feature. It actually doesn't serve any purpose. On the flip side, I don't really use the touchpad on PC that often, and it would cost more with this, but for the occasional PlayStation game on PC, it would be nice. The material on everything here feels solid and is nice outside of the D-pad and the triggers, which it might just be the color I chose, but they look like cheaper plastic to me. Now they feel durable and not cheap, but when I'm just visually looking at them, it's throwing me off a little bit. I don't know if that would be the same if this was a different color, but my guess is black would look the best potentially. But then again, the back of the controller is the same kind of plastic and it has just this cheaper look to it. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's throwing me off. So personally, I wish this was all the same finish as the front faceplate, even though that does collect a lot of smudge marks. In general, I have high praise for this controller, but some downsides I want to cover are the lack of information on the polling rate and input lag, as mentioned earlier. This also is only compatible with PC, as you can't use the dongle on any console or even plug it in just directly with the USB Type-C cable and use it. Being this expensive and not having it at least compatible with an Xbox, since that's a Microsoft product, it's a bit of a bummer. I get the lack of software being an issue, but since you can store 3 profiles here, that to me just seems like a no-brainer. And again, the price is so high, it feels like a missed opportunity. It kind of forces you into getting their specific Xbox and PlayStation controller. So from a monetary standpoint on their end, I get it. But at the same time, when you're spending $180 on this controller, I wish you had more options with it. This also lacks a gyroscope, and for the price, I just figured that would kind of be a given. Now, that's not something I personally use often, but again, for $180, I would expect certain features like that to be here. Now that's all of the negatives here. There's only a handful of things I want to cover last. The charging cable is braided and feels high quality, and I like that they include the USB Type-C adapter here that you can use with both the charging cable and wireless and dongle. I like that they included the 2 convex thumbsticks also, with one being taller for anyone that needs that for certain games. So that's going to wrap this video up. Overall, I love this controller, and although we are lacking some information right now and it doesn't have a couple of features like a gyroscope, I still think this is going to be my favorite controller for a while. And this is always coming back to just how great those Omron switches feel. Hopefully we see some adjustments in the software for the polling rate and a way to actually monitor input lag. But again, performance for me has been top notch, and even without those things in the software right now, overall I still think it offers quite a lot of adjustments and is still quite good. A charging station would be a cool thing to see at some point just to make charging this easier than plugging it in. Now realistically, I'm not sure how likely that is to happen. I do hope we see an Envision Pro specific carrying case instead of the general one that they have right now for just all of their controllers. So fingers crossed on those 2 things right now. Again, I don't know how likely they are to happen. What I do think will happen is that we are going to see a lot of updates to the software as they get more feedback. At some point, we will see the replacement parts on the website as well. I may even get just a replacement for the faceplate as we see that we have those other options. Down the road, I would like the custom route in terms of I can throw any image on there as well. That's something I've always wanted from Scuf, and they just don't have it yet. Fingers crossed on that though. I don't know if they ever will, but I'm hopeful that at some point it is an option. But regardless of all of that, this controller may not be for everyone. But I'm guessing if you're even watching my video, it's piqued your interest enough to seek a review, and I hope that this one has helped you in your purchasing decision. I'll have a link for this in the description if you want to check it out. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section. I'll make sure to answer that for you there. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.